Welcome to the Spike Camp podcast. Spike Camp is a free online community for hunters that support conservation. It's a great place to share stories and your experience with other hunters. As a member of Spike Camp, you get access to all of our hunting live streams, discussion channels, contests, hunter resources, and events that we host. Membership to Spike Camp is free. Our only ask is that you are a member of a hunting or conservation group before you register. Head over to spikecamp.com to join us. This episode of the Spike Camp podcast is brought to you in part by Precision Optics. Omer and his team are the ones to trust when it comes to mountain hunting gear, guns, and optics. Precision Optics is a major supporter of conservation, and we are proud to partner with them. Head over to precisionoptics.net and tell them that Spike Camp sent you.
All right, well, welcome to the first episode of the 2024 Elk Camp. Tonight we got a couple of good old BC boys on the show here tonight to talk about elk. Devin and Curt Gassoff from the Come Out Heavy podcast. Boys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Looking forward to this. Talking elk with anybody is fun. So,
yeah, it's cool. The season is just around the corner. Everybody's getting the itchy bugle, and you see guys driving around town. I'm sure in both your towns with bugles out the window practicing, right? So.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen anyone driving around, but Curt and I are known for doing that on our long road trips, stopping through Kelowna, hit a stoplight, roll the window down, and buzz the tower.
Yeah.
Do it at the
drive-thru. Yeah, the crackhead sleeping on the side of the road, and you rip a bugle at him, and he wakes up.
That's a good time to practice the lip balls, right?
Yeah, that's right. You can't have us out of a couple cold ones.
Hey, no worries. That's what it's all about. Well, I think most of the members on Spike Camp should or would know who the Come Out Heavy boys are, but maybe give us just a short intro on the two of you, who you are, and how you guys got into hunting. We don't need the whole story. I know we had the old boys on that episode a few months ago. It was really good, by the way. I love that show. It was awesome. You must have got them drunk and got them talking, did you?
Surprisingly not. No, we were all, we might have had one beer maybe at the end, but out of all the episodes we've done, for me, that was by far my favorite. Just, talking to them. We don't have those in-depth conversations very often, I don't think, with our old mans, but it was, that one definitely hit home for me, Dev? What about you?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Like, we talk hunting with our dads, but I don't think we've ever sat down and structured a conversation and asked these pointed questions where, it was set up for them to give us answers and like whatever answers they wanted. And there was things that they told us or brought up that I'd never heard before, or stories about grandpa or their own childhood. Like I didn't even know, that some of the guns they shot were Curt's first guns and my first guns and just things like that. So I highly recommended to sit down with your parents and your grandparents and pull those kind of things out of them.
Well, yeah, and sometimes a lot of those old boys, they won't say shit until you ask them, right? They're not going to talk. You got to pry it out of them. So Anyway, back to the show. So what got you guys into the podcast? I don't know if I ever heard the how you got here story.
I'll let you take that one, Dev.
Okay. There is a story behind it, kind of. Curt and I listened to a lot, and you know what? It's elk hunting. If I was to pinpoint what got us into thinking about doing a podcast together, it was probably elk hunting. So, and why I say that is when we were diving in, well, we still dive into learning more about elk and hunting and in general, but Curt and I were backcountry hunting elk, and I was successful here and there. We were struggling together for years. And Curt at the time was working as an equipment operator. So he was listening to podcasts 10 hours a day, because listening to, classic rock for 10 hours in a piece of equipment is pretty boring after a while. And he'd send me, I wasn't even listening to podcasts. This is probably 5 years ago. Didn't even really know what they were about. I heard about Joe Rogan, those types of things. And Curt sent me Paul Medell, the elk nut. We've talked about it. We've had him on our podcast. he's like, dude, you got to listen to this. Like, it just, everything he's saying is mistakes we've made, encounters we've been in, those types of things. So really there was probably 2 years of just listening to Paul Medell and then searching the internet at that time, being like, well, what other hunting shows are out there that we can learn from? I really started enjoying it. I think Curt was listening to him lots and finding different ones. And I don't know, a couple seasons went by. We went on our first big sheep hunt together. Like, Curt had been on a few, and then we did a couple big mountain hunts together, had a couple good elk seasons. And I said to Curt one fall, we were recapping, like literally doing this. I was in Canadian Tire. We were talking on the phone, and we were recapping the last couple weeks of elk hunting. And Curt was telling me a story about a deer he killed. And fuck, I walked around Canadian Tire. I was done shopping, and I just was cruising for like 45 minutes. And we talked about elk hunting, and we joked. And I said something at the end. I was like, man, where's the BC podcasts that are like this, that are relatable like this? And like the good old boys is telling stories. And Curt's like, oh, there's a few. You know, at the time Beyond the Kill was big, and there was a couple other ones. And he's like, but they're not like what you're saying. Like, they're not bad, but they're not what you just said, like relatable like that. So we joked and said, well, we should have a podcast. We could just fucking say whatever we want, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, Curt, like a week later, we texted back and forth, and we're like, dude, I think we should actually do this. Yeah. That's kind of it. And then we just did it. We said, screw it, let's try it. It was COVID, like COVID kicked in, and it was like, we had a lot of free time at that time and no idea how to record yourself talking about hunting or anything. And that's basically how it was. It was like, let's do it. And then when we decided, yes, we were going to do it, we probably spent 2 weeks trying to come up with a name. You should have heard some of these stupid names that we had texting back and forth. And for some reason, for years, the saying, go in light, come out heavy, was just like a hashtag and all these things. And I had it wrote down, just come out heavy. And for some reason, we kind of were both like, I think it should just be that. It's kind of is what it is. And yeah, I think it fit really well because it fits our style and fits the show.
Yeah, it does too. And I think, you bring up a couple good points. I mean, I always joke with Yonki, I call him the OG of, hunting podcasts, right? Because he was he did his podcast before anybody of substance in Canada, for sure. There's no real Canadian content back when Adam started his, and he's interviewed so many different people, and had Nolan on there for years. But other than that, there was a few that started up, and it was pretty quiet on the podcast scene. And I think you're right. COVID just gave us all a lot of free time to come up with shit to do and projects, and some stuck and some didn't. But the name, yeah, you're right. I mean, when we were building our plan, if you want to call it that, to start Spike Camp, we were we threw all kinds of names out. One of the things, Blake, given his background and the digital marketing and social media, web design, all that stuff, he's always grabbing web domains and stuff. And I don't know, how many did you grab, Blake, before we stuck with Spike Camp? Probably a dozen or so, right? The time we figured out.
I'm too cheap to buy all the domains, but I looked up a bunch of options, and we got Spike Camp. We bought off a guy, but yeah.
Yeah. So. Well, cool. Nice. Well, we're glad you guys are here, and I'm glad you're still doing the podcast, even though life is normal. So it's good to listen, get you guys out there. Thanks. So I've listened to probably most of your episodes, and I know the background for both of you was with your family hunting, primarily in the north. But I don't know that there was a lot of elk hunting that went on when you guys were younger, right? Is this something you guys discovered later in life after, I guess, Dev, did you live in Quesnel area, or no? You always lived somewhere else, right?
Well, no, I grew up in Quesnel. So Curt and I mean, we're basically like brothers. Like, a lot of people would mistake us for brothers. For even people that knew our family were like, well, you guys are brothers. And we're like, no, we're cousins. But we grew up very close. And I'm an only child, so Curt's like a brother to me. And we had lots of cousins. So yeah, I grew up in Quesnel until I was 19. And then I went to the Kootenays here playing hockey and going to welding school at the same time. So I played a little bit of junior hockey, did that, met a girl, and saw the mountains when I was 19, and really didn't have, besides family draw, I didn't have to run back to Quesnel and do anything. So I was just going to plan to see it for a summer, check out the mountains. You know, it's the Kootenays. I played hockey and went to school, so I didn't really get out much. Well, it happened that the girl I was dating, who's my wife now, her dad, I walk in their house at 19 years old to meet the family, and there's a 350-inch bull hanging off the wall. And I'm like, holy shit, like, that's a nice bull, right? And they're like, oh yeah, they're all over. Like, we hunted him. He shows me a shed, and he's got 7 points hanging in there with broken sabers and just all these things. So then it kind of clicked at that time that I was like, oh, there's some things to do in the Kootenays besides, you know, swimming the lakes and hiking the mountains. And so that's kind of my story of like, yeah, we didn't grow up hunting elk. Curt and I didn't hunt elk for 20 years of our lives. Never even heard of bugle.
Mm-hmm. Right. And Curt, there's some elk up your way, but there's probably more hunters than elk, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we're kind of on the fine line of Region 5 and Region 7, and it seems like there's a ton of elk in Region 5, but no seasons for them other than like an odd LEH on private land. And then as soon as you hit Region 7, it just gets flooded. So yeah, it's definitely frustrating. And I think I think I was 20 when I did my first elk hunt here. And, you know, like Devin was just kind of getting into it. I had no idea about it. My brother-in-law picked me up from work one day and said, we're going elk hunting. I'm like, okay, cool. I think I had Carhartts and steel toes on, and we went out, rips a bugle. Next thing you know, we got bulls coming in, and he shoots a 6-point. And I was like, this was the most exciting night of my life at this time, right? Like, that was the coolest thing ever. And then Devin was getting into it, and then he started pounding elk down there, and that just kind of got us addicted right away, right?
Yeah, that's cool. So did either or both of you have, like you mentioned your future father-in-law, Deb, did you guys have any mentors to kind of show you the ropes back then, or did you just boots on the ground and get after it?
So yeah, I can give my father-in-law some credit for sure. I mean, he actually was falling out of hunting. So he had 2 girls growing up, and they didn't get into hunting. So he hunted with his dad. And I think me just pushing, like once I got, you know, in with the family, you know how it is with a new boyfriend, you know, he wasn't exactly going to share secrets with me. But after, you know, they realized I wasn't a complete piece of shit, he was like, okay, well, this kid's all right. I can take him out and maybe he can pack. I think it was like the old, we'll get firewood and I'll show him a couple elk spots trick. Yeah. We've talked about that with our dads. And no, it was good. I think his daughter and wife kind of said, like, you haven't been hunting in like 2 years. Why don't you go? Like, Devin wants to go. Like, just take him. Like, go hunting. So that definitely started. And I would say really got me understanding, what to look for with elk. Like, for how to find them was the big one. Like, he taught me, you know, where they eat on the sides of the roads at night. Like, just to identify if there's elk in the country. Just the simple things, you know, that I didn't really understand. We grew up hunting, basically driving roads until you saw mule deer and moose, and you piled out and you pounded them and you drug them out of the bush, like get some meat, you know, get them down. So I wasn't never really at 20 really looking for that sign and then understanding the next steps. And he had a few bugles, but you know, the old boys didn't have to call the way we do nowadays. So it was, no, you just go out. We step out of the truck and we flash a hoochie mama and we rip a power bugle and the bulls would answer. So I was like, this is unreal. So then I just kept pushing, like, where did you kill that bull? Where did you kill that bull? You know, and he'd be like, well, that was over here. And it took a little while. And then finally I drug him in and we ended up having to backpack a couple bulls out. And, you know, we bought backpacks together. So like my first, I guess, mountain hunting backpack was an Everly stock, like a really simple Everly stock that he bought and I bought together. And because we were going to walk 500 yards away from a road and kill an elk. So there was a lot of little things that, you know, what they really taught me, and it is not elk as much, but goat hunting is what they really introduced me to, I would say, down here. But elk is definitely the where I steered most of my focus.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know a few old boys that used to hunt East and West Kootenays, and you hear the good old days stories of when, there's a bull on every branch road you turn off and get out of the truck and bugle. But you're right, they did hunt a lot differently back then, and you didn't hear so much of the well, I guess they probably didn't have all the road closures for one that they do now. I mean, basically every decent elk road for the most part, and especially in the East Kootenays, right, is closed for vehicles in hunting season. But you used to hear the stories, they rip a bugle and, like you said, hoochie mama, 4 bulls rip off and, dive in. They didn't go too far. Backpack hunting, overnight backpack hunting was only the extreme hunters did that shit, right?
Those first days, I mean, I was right out of junior B hockey, so my legs, I was thin and my legs were fresh, and I remember just being like, oh, see that over there? I'll hike into that. And he's like, are you kidding me? That's terrible. He's like, no, just drop me off. And I remember being like, you go to that end of the road, I'll hike into this cut, and we'll meet at the end of the night. And that first time doing that, he must have thought I was crazy, but I was like, well, I'll just go over there. And I remember sitting there by myself. This is like early, like one of my first elk hunts. And I'm sitting on a stump in a slash, and I'm hoochie mama in, and I got a shitty bugle, and I got bulls answering, and I have zero clue what's going on, but it instantly hooked me because I was like, this is unreal. Like, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what the elk are doing. I don't even know like anything. And it was just like, from then on, it's escalated. And even to this, like, well, we'll get into it where we're at now, but it's crazy how it's still just hooked in me. It's sunk.
One of the things I wanted to touch on was the early days, because I think anybody who's hunted elk and stuck with it has those memories and stories of how stupid we were when we first started, and the shit that we tried, and the blown call-ins and the equipment that we used, right? So what was your first? Did you start off with a power bugle or one of those Reed built-in units, or what did you guys use?
Yeah, my first was Primos was big back then. So The Truth About Bulls was the big DVDs back then. There wasn't much in 16 years ago for elk content. This was probably a few years before the elk content, like Corey Jacobson, like Elk 101, and all these boys really started pumping stuff out. But I had no idea. The first calls were Primos, and they were not Reeds. So I remember having a call pack. You could buy like a pack of calls, and there was a short little bugle in it, about 12 inches long. I think it was like a pack bugle or something. It had a hoochie mama, and it had I still have all these calls, like a cowgirl, I think, the little green one that everyone had. It's like, yeah, like really ugly sound. And then it had one reed. And I remember it came like that, and I was driving home from, we drove to Spokane and got it at the Cabela's, and I had my father-in-law, my mother-in-law in the car, and Christina, and I drove them up the wall trying to figure out these elk calls on the drive home. But that was the start for me. I've never heard what Curt started with.
What was yours, Curt?
It was the same thing. Like Garrick had a power bugle, and like the first time we went out, he called that bull and he killed it. And I just had the hoochie mama and started with that, and I just ran back and forth in the slash hoochie mamming until this bull came in. And then I went and bought a pack bugle, because in Quesnel there wasn't at that time a lot of places that sold game calls. So whatever they had, I bought. I remember just buying one of everything. And then over the years, I've probably bought 50 of everything, because for some reason in between seasons you lose them, right? And then you find them years down the road. But that, and then the Hot Lips, the double reed one, that was my go-to one. I loved that one. And then just pretty much any bugle that you could buy, I've probably owned it once in my life. Like I went from the pack bugle to the Terminator to the baffle bugle to a power bugle, and then Devin's the one that kind of taught me how to use reeds, because you see these guys and everyone sounds the same. Like we joke about it now, like we call it the Doug Flutie, and it's just the perfect Terminator, right? Yeah. And I remember doing that over and over and over again, and the bull would make the same sound. So all I was trying to do was make the same sound the elk was making, not knowing back then what it really meant, right? He's probably looking at me like, is this person slow or what? Like, why is he mimicking me the whole time, right? But yeah, like for me, it was my first 2 elk hunts, my brother-in-law kills a 6-point. The second time I go out with 2 buddies, they've never been elk hunting before. I've been once, call a 6-point in, and I missed it. And I never pulled the trigger on another elk for 14 years. And I've been within 5 feet of 5 points. And I just never could find a 6-point, especially in Cornell. It was just killing me, right? So like I could write a book on what not to do when it comes to elk hunting, because any scenario I've probably been in it and I've messed it up 100 times. And like, you know, listening to like Paul Medell and all these guys kind of break down elk calling, I could just sit back and be like, yes, I did that. And yes, I did that wrong. And I did that wrong. And, you know, I definitely could have stacked a lot of elk up over the years, knowing what we know now. But yeah, that's kind of what got me into it and how I started.
Well, that's cool. It's an interesting journey. You know, I've been hunting elk a long time myself, killed a couple bulls. And then it was about, almost 8 years ago now, I got Blake into it. He was a young guy, and we were hunting East Kootenays primarily in 6-point zone. And we got just 5-point itis, man. Like it was just nonstop. Every time we called a bull in, it was a 5-point. And we had just amazing experiences and learned a lot. And then really wasn't until last year when we did our first Elk Camp series and we brought in a bunch of different people. And one thing I learned about that, we brought in some really accomplished elk assassins, you know, guys, one guy that owns a call company, another fella that, you know, just a BC elk hunter who really knows how to hunt in BC. One of the things we learned about that is if you talk to 2, 3, or 4 really good elk hunters who've had a lot of success, there is no magic way to do it. Everybody does it a little bit differently. Like some guys are bugle first guys. Some guys are cow call guys. I mean, the strategy seems to change. And what we did, we changed gears last year and we went north to the Peace Country. I was just tired of calling in 5 points and 4 points for Blake. I had to get him his bull. And we managed to get a nice 5-point on the very first day. We played with a couple of bulls, but what we did is we sort of took pieces from a little bit from Paul Medell and, you know, a little bit of Corey Jacobson. And we had, I don't know, 2 or 3 different scenarios all happen the very first morning we were out, and we just put it together and it worked. So I think the lesson that we took away from listening to all these experts was, you know, you just got to kind of let the scenario dictate, the situation dictate what you're going to do, right? And know a couple possible solutions, or hopefully no solutions to get it done, right? So it's a science though, right? I mean, it's complicated for sure.
Yeah, it's a game too. Like it's like there's always something different and you think you know it, and I mean I don't think I know it. Like there's even the best of the best don't think, like you hear Paul talk about it. He's like, I'm going out learning every year. Yeah, we call in 90% of the bulls we encounter, but he's like, I want more, which is interesting to hear someone who's, you know, been successful at call, because calling an elk is what we're doing. We don't live in a country where we spot and stalk an elk or where you're identifying them. We have to call them in, especially down here.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, in BC, that's the case in general, right? I mean, we don't have those big ranges where these guys go out and glass and, oh, there's a 300 or a 350 or a 400 inch bull over here. You know, we all know you don't know what that bull is. 90% of the time, you don't know what you're calling in until he's 10 yards from you or 15 yards, right? So you're in a panic in the last second.
That's my favorite part of it, I think. I
That's
said it on our
adrenaline,
podcast. Oh, it's like my imagination. Every bull's an 8-point in my mind. Like it's like that. It's got to be. It's huge, or at least you have the chance of that because you don't see it, you don't know. And when they do walk in, it's just like when a big one walks in, it's fucking unreal feeling.
Well, we're going to get to that in a little bit because I know you definitely had that happen. How far into your elk hunting careers, this is a question for both of you guys, how far in were you before you each got your first bull? Like how many years did you try before you killed one?
I was 14 years.
14.
So, yeah. It was a dry
But you were on 2 successful ones before that though.
Yeah, right away. And like I was on elk every time. It just either 5 points come in, like come right into 10 feet, and just can't
Yeah.
grow that 6-point, or just something like the wind shifting, something like that, right? Or
Blows it.
it's in your nose the whole time, and then you get into that kill zone where you're within 50 yards and the bull's coming in, and then you just feel that air hit the back of your ears, gone.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times that's happened to me and you, Devin, over the years down there, where it's, especially when you're hunting in those alpine basins.
Every hunt,
man. Like I had some pretty long drives coming home from the Kootenays there with a pretty pouty lip.
Yeah. Well, I'm in a sheep drought, so I know what that's like. I think it was my 8th sheep hunt. I helped a buddy kill one on my 2nd sheep hunt, got a real nice ram, and then I've just been 7-year-old to death, or passed on one that was a squeaker. So I know the feeling. Blake did 7 years before he got his bull. And Dev, when was your first one? Sorry.
I want to say it was I think my 2nd season of like actively like trying to kill elk.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, I mean, it changed in the West Kootenays 5 or 6 years ago now, but that was when there was LEH, lots of LEH zones, and I never pulled an LEH, so I was adamant to hunt the small little sections that were open to 6 points. So I was cruising roads, and I ended up it was like 10:30. I was taking a piss, and I was looked down. I'm like, those are fresh elk tracks right on the end of a logging road, and I had a call in my pocket. It was a hot lips, and I blew the hot lips, and I got 2 bulls down in the timber to answer. And this big one, well, not that big, but older bull came up and circled around us and stepped out in the logging slash, and we've counted 6 on him and ended up shooting him. And I called my father-in-law and was like, I killed a bull. And he's like, yeah, right. Like there was no way he believed that I killed a bull. So yeah, I did get into it quick, and I learned a lot on that first kill. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. Wasn't a big pack out then? You were in a log out.
So it shouldn't have been a big pack out. And so this bull came out. He walked down the logging cut probably to about 125 yards. We verified 6-point. I shot him. Feel like I had a good shot, and then he didn't go down, so I just kept shooting, and then he just kind of hunched away into the timber. And at that time, I think I was 21 and hadn't been on a lot of hunts, on my own, and was like, oh, I'll give him 10 minutes. I think I hit him good. We'll go up there. So we found blood and walked into the bush, and he was dying 10 feet into the timber with a big pile of blood, but we bumped him, and he ran for a kilometer into the nastiest shit. And then I had to track him. So I had to learn at that time how to track an elk in the Kootenays. And I was probably wearing steel toe boots, like Curt said, in the first ones. Like I didn't have mountain boots back then. I think at that time I had my Everly stock, but we got up to him. I had like an old handsaw and an old timer knife. And I was like, within the partner I was with was kind of just a guy from work, like not even a real avid hunter. We were both like kind of deer hunters, and we roll up on this bull, and we're like, fuck, now what? Like literally like
it just got bigger.
Yeah,
and farther
like, what
from
do
the
we do?
truck.
Like I've never packed an animal out of the bush at that time, and so it was like trial by error, skin them out. And at that time I would have gutted them. The gutless method wasn't even a thing back then or even talked about. I would have gutted them just like we did deer. And then I even remember, this is like the saddest part about the story, is I had like a little Gerber handsaw, and at that time I had no idea that you could take the skull off with a knife, like a Euro, pop that knuckle. So I tried to skull cap him, and I couldn't even do that. So the antlers actually came out in 2 pieces. Like I still have them like that to this day. Like it was such a shit show. We had black garbage bags in the backpacks. We had, it was a big eye opener, and I definitely learned a lot before the next hunting season, or made myself learn a lot.
Well, that's the best way to learn, right? It's like, I remember moose hunting. I used to have a buddy, an older fella that taught me how to moose hunt. And this was decades before anybody tried the gutless method. And he used to take literally a hatchet and go right from stem to stern down the spine with a hatchet and a hammer. He carried a little hammer in his pack. And I used to think like, holy shit, there's got to be a better way than this. And turns out there is, right? There is a much better way. But, you know, you only got to do those trips like that or those kills like that once, and then you definitely learn and try to figure something else out, right? For sure.
Yeah.
Well, the title of the episode that we came up with was Hunting a Target Bull. Before we jump into hunting the target bull, I want to talk a little bit about the strategy and the resources that you guys use to try to find elk. And I've heard you talk about it on your show a few times, but you guys are big fat map guys, right? You like to do a lot of e-scouting, right?
Well, we like to e-scout a lot, and Fat Maps was our go-to. We had a bit of a collaboration going with them at a time, but I actually this year we have to, well, we don't have to, but they're getting, because they got bought by the bigger company Strava, it's turning into something different, and I don't trust that it's going to be something usable right now. So yeah, Fat Maps is great. But yeah, mapping software is like, now on the phone I'm trying Gaia, which is very similar, but it actually has better hunting layers, I'm finding. It actually has the management units, it has the LEH zones, it has Backroads map book layers. And as I'm using it, it's actually works better offline than Fat Maps has been. Like, as far as I found, Fat Maps was glitchy with picking up GPS. It was always slow. So there's good things. Fat Maps was unbelievably clear. Like, that was why we used it.
The imagery, imagery is really good.
Oh, it's so good. And we got into that because of sheep. So the clarity was sheep more than elk. We use it like the digital mapping mainly to mark things, I think, more than anything when I'm in the backcountry, you know, setting camps, find a wallow. Like, how many times we've stumbled upon wallows and I'll never find that wallow again if I don't pin it. Like, maybe I want to run a cam on it the next year. Just know that there's a water source, water, wallows. That's really like the biggest thing. And then navigation when you're in the backcountry. So I would say I don't use the mapping software for e-scouting as much for elk as I do for sheep, mainly because we have our spots now. But I do use it as, like, I'll look at my pins and I'll be like, well, where have we killed bulls? I have them pinned. And I'm like, what's maybe common about those areas, so I can find another spot that has a similar landscape or some features, like certain ridges that are facing a certain way or those types of things. So I dabble a bit with that side of it.
So I know in the Kootenays, like, the terrain, just from, if you're looking from the logging road up, it all looks the same, right? If you're driving down a logging road, you don't see the bluffs that are in the trees. You don't see all those benches. You certainly don't see water. What are some of the things you're looking for if you're trying to find that new spot? What are some of the key things?
So Fat Maps used to have an awesome feature called flats, and we used to turn flats on, and then it would just show these tiny little, and they were very quite I guess really small. So they, like, you know, topo lines kind of don't really give you a really good flat. It shows you benches and it shows you different things. We used to turn flats on and you'd see a tiny little green dot somewhere and be like, oh, we should go. We'd be in the backcountry, or maybe pin that. Like, that's a nice flat spot, and it looks like there's a creek draw here. So we'd use it for that. That'd be one way to try to identify. Definitely, I would turn on, this was like Fat Maps again had a feature where you could turn on aspect and you could put a custom aspect on. So you could say, like, all slopes facing northeast above this certain meter, and it would show you those slopes. Or if you wanted to see, you know, early September dark timber where they likely are bedding and finding water, you'd put on a lot of north slopes, feeding slopes. Like, the aspect ratio or the aspect of slopes I've played with a bit just to get an idea if it makes a difference, like, as far as where we're finding elk. I would say you can't go off it. Like, you hear that quite a bit where it's like, if you're like, oh, they're in the north because it's hot out. Well, we killed our bull last year on a south-facing slope. So they were in the north when they were feeding. Like, we saw them feeding on the north side of the mountain, mainly because that's where the feed was and it wasn't dried out. So depending on where you want to kill them, like, that would be the one thing. But we put the one to bed on a north-facing slope, but the one we killed ended up being on a south-facing slope because we went over the ridge. So it's a little bit of a grain of salt as far as what you're going to use it for and how you identify spots with it, I think.
Would you say of all the different things to look for, water sources would probably be right at the top or close to it? Creeks and stuff? In your country, I guess that'd be the question.
Yeah, I mean, they have to have water, but it's pretty wild how you find water in the mountains, I would say. I don't know how much time guys have spent just hiking through the West Kootenay timber. You would think it's like, oh, this face is like Matt and I hunt this one spot. I haven't taken Curt there a lot, and it's straight west facing. So really west facing, like, and we hunt the whole slope, and you would think it would be like just shitty because it's west, it's getting afternoon sun. There's a few, and then it's just got fingers that run east to west. So it's a, south north mountain. And then there's these fingers, and you're going in there and the leaves are dry and it's dusty. And you're like, there's no way. But we've come across 3 different creeks and wallows all the way along that. And it's not creeks you see on FAP maps, and it's not things. So what you could do if you were, trying to pull some information out, like new guys looking like, well, how do we leave a road and find maybe some elk country? I would suggest, like, if you see the contour of like a little ravine and it's off the beaten path, there's a chance there might be water in there, even though it's been a dry summer. Like, we have some spots where we've hung cams on that you would think would be dry, and they still trickle water all summer. It's just like a spring coming out of the rocks. So yeah, you want to find water, but we don't hunt water, I would say. Okay. You definitely don't want to be like, I've never sat on water. I've never used it as that kind of tactic.
Yeah, I mean, and you discover wallows in the craziest places, and sometimes the wallow's like 3 feet square. It's just a mud hole, right? And then you'll find all the rubs all around it, and you're like, wow, look at all these rubs. And then you look down and you're standing in mud. There's your wallow, right? It could just be anywhere. I know you guys are big proponents of cameras. Obviously, that helped last year, hey?
Yeah, so Curt runs a series of cameras up north for deer and elk and just anything. And I've been running trail cams. I mean, most hunters do, but I got into it, Curt. It was probably right as we started really getting serious. So in our early 20s, mid 20s, I would say I started hiking in. It was kind of that point, and you kind of go back to like the beginning of elk hunting, like you were asking, like, how did it start and how these things go? Well, leaving the road in my early 20s for a kilometer felt like 100 kilometers. Yeah, I felt like I didn't know what I was doing back there. I felt like I was a long way from civilization. And those are those early years, but your mileage changes so much, like when you just keep doing it. And I remember I remember Curt and Garrett killing that bull. He was talking about like his first one that he was on, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, how'd you guys kill this bull all of a sudden? Like, I remember being super jealous and being like, that's unreal. But like, I didn't even know there was elk in Quesnel at the time. So then I was like, well, I'm going to start hanging trail cameras. I'm going to figure this out. Like, I kept reading about it in magazines, seeing stuff on the internet, and I just walked in. Like, I had a couple elk hunting spots that we had called some bulls in on, but it was not far from the roads. Like, just walking in off the timber, and then we'd call a bull to the edge of a clearing or an old cut or something. And I was like, well, there's got to be something up this drainage. So I just started hiking in. And that first year I hung a cam, I found wallow. I found a wallow and some water. I hung a cam, and I had one camera out. And I remember that first year pulling that cart, and I had, I think, 4 or 5 6-point bulls, different 6-point bulls on that camera. And then it was like, wow. So they're coming to this water. They're coming there quite a bit in this activity. And what it really did for me, well, I'd send the pictures to Curt, and we've continued to tease him like this. Well, even today, I sent him photos this morning, and Matt's been sending photos in our group chat. But it doesn't make us target a bull, but it sure makes you be confident when you're backpacking into a spot knowing that there's some legal bulls in that spot. I would say that's the biggest reason I do it. I mean, I really like it because I love seeing big bulls. I love it's the same allure of like how big are they out there, and whether you kill one or see one on camera, you get a little bit of the taste of like, holy shit, there's a big bull. So that was kind of what I really enjoyed. Now Matt and I have I think 7 or 8 up this year that we're continually checking pretty much every weekend. I mean, I just ran in, changed some batteries, and checked one a couple days ago just to make sure it's running. I mean, we got 11 days till elk season, and I'm using that as like, and to be honest, we have a few 6 points on camera, so we have a few target bulls, you would say. As far as legality, by no means are we like, oh, we're going in to kill, that bull tomorrow. It's just like, well, there was a legal bull in there 10 days ago. Let's go see if he's still in there.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. So I didn't hear about a sheep hunt. I know, Curt, you had a new member of the family recently, so your world's kind of upside down. Are you heading south for opener rifle or bow with Deb and Matt, or what's your plan?
Gonna head down about right around the 12th, 13th, and I got a nice 10-day slot. Yeah, I get in there to rifle season. A few days late for the opener, but that's the best I could do this year.
Hey, well, young family, right? That's the way it goes. So
yeah.
Well, right on.
So to touch on the game camera thing too, just one thing I really like I use it more for mule deer than elk, but is when you get different bulls on camera, you can identify those bulls from their tops, because anyone that's hunted in the thick shit that we do, a lot of times that's all you can see when they come in, right? Or you see an ass and I don't know how many times I've seen the top 4 on a bull, but you can't see the brows. But if you see a bladed bull come in, or a bull that's got a weird point on the top, you can quickly identify that bull, even when he's 100 yards away. And you're like, okay, like I've seen this bull before. I know what he is. So that's just, I see Matt had any quick tips on counting 6 times real fast. Well, if you already know what he's got up on top, the second you see his brows, it's game over, right? So anything I can do to help Matt there, he needs lots of help. So.
He's writing it down.
He's writing it all down.
Good.
As far as models, I see there was a question for trail cam brand models. I've ran them all. I had a really good stint with a Bushnell for years. It ran well and then it died. Spy points I've had decent luck with. Moultrie always seemed to be good. I've never spent a ton of money. I'm pretty cheap that way, so I go like, I'll spend more than $100, but I probably won't spend more than $200 on a trail camera type thing. So I don't think I've tried them all. They all kind of work. Some kill batteries. Kurt's probably ran trail cameras longer than I have, like as far as like you run them all year on your properties and different things, so you might have some brands you've liked.
Yeah, like I've got a bunch for security cameras on my property, and then I've got them all over the bush. And I've tried a lot of, I've got some spy points, which some are good, some are shitty. I've ran stealth cams. I haven't had very good luck with them. I bought one of the expensive ones right away, and that lasted probably 5 years, but I bought the cheapos, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. The best cameras, I've had 2 of these, the Wild Game Innovations, and I've had 2 of those for, I'd probably say 8 years, and they're my most reliable cameras. Like I've got them in my best spots, because I know that every time I go out there, they're going to run until the batteries die. And good batteries too. That's another thing that people don't. You buy the cheapo batteries. If you buy the lithium ones, you're gonna change batteries once. That's it. You're gonna last all season. And I'm talking like I got 2,000 videos on some cameras, right? So it makes a big difference running good batteries and good cameras, man. Like it's, if you got a spot, if it's gonna get sap on it, well, it's not gonna last long. I've had issues where, especially in the freeze thaw cycle, it rains or snows, it melts and it gets in the camera and then it freezes. And I've had shit pop apart. I've had lenses fog up or freeze up. So that makes a big difference too.
So, do you both leave your cameras out all year, or do you pull them? I guess depending on situation, maybe. Hey, where it's at.
Certain areas I'll leave, like my security cameras are up all year round. I have those all the time. I keep probably 2 on like my blind areas. I keep them up all year round. I like to see what's rolling through in the winter, in the spring, in the summer, and then you'd be surprised the amount of big bucks. Like for me, it's more deer than anything, but like you'll get deer that come in the end of December you've never seen, and they're hammers, and you're like, where was this guy all year, right? And then you might not see him for 2 years, and then boom, all of a sudden he pops up 2 years later. And if he's rolling around in December, then well, he's not too far away, and it's going to be the same for elk too, right? Like if you have a bull come through, say in August, he might be around, and they like to travel too, right? But as soon as the rut comes, they could be 2 mountains over. But if you find where he's living, good chance you're probably going to get a chance to find that bull sooner or later, right? Or know what his routine is.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, Dev, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say we pull our elk cams. The spots that we've found to hang them nowadays, like it took a while to get to these levels, but to be honest, they're in the rutting areas. Some of that's by complete fluke, and now it's because we identify cam spots while we're hunting that this year, like if I find a spot, it's getting pinned for the next year or whatever. And a lot of I like leaving mine up till November, but I'll be real honest, the amount of pics I've had of bull elk outside of the last week of August up until the first week of October, and then they're gone. So we've definitely, which is good for hunting, we've found the right spots for the purpose of finding bulls in the rut when you can hunt them. So I always pull mine. I don't have elk are so migratory as far as especially in where we're at, as far as their summer grounds, their breeding grounds, and then their winter grounds. And that's the one thing I've never even figured out yet, is where they winter. And because these guys that do know how to shed hunt and figure out their wintering, I have not had the extra time to figure that out. And because guys will run cams, but they usually move them to that area to see what bulls made it through, to see what bulls are on. Like I have buddies down here that send me pictures and pick up sheds, and I'm like, it's like a 360-inch 6-point. And I'm like, dude, he's like, yeah, we can't find them in hunting season. We have no idea where they are. that particular bull. Yeah.
So what are if I'm sure Matt's ready to write this down. Just teasing you. What when you say you find a good spot to hang a cam for the rut season, what are you looking for as far as like sign in that, all right, this is the spot we got to hang a cam?
Well, it's definitely the wallows. Like those are a no-brainer. That's if you don't know where to hang a camera, like if you're new to it, and you find a wallow, and next year you want to know if there's any bulls in there at certain times of the year, I would recommend wallows. That was the first place I wanted to find, was either a water source or a wallow. But a wallow is the best because you're trying to find where the bulls are, right? It is good to know where the cows are. It's good to know that there's cows in that area during the rut, because that's also obviously critical. So some guys are always like, oh, I'm not getting any bulls on my camera in August. And you're like, that's okay. Are you getting cows? And does it look like they're going to stay in there? Because that's also really good. So we found that I would say I don't have like a pinpoint recipe. As far as it's honestly hunting, like hunting hard and getting in your boots on the ground still is the number one thing that's given us our new cam locations. It's the same thing you always hear about, like, well, how do you find more game, or how do you find better hunting spots? You hike more, you go farther,
more miles on.
You put more miles on, and that's how and you just try it. Buy more cameras. If like we get close to putting up, 2 or 3 or 4 every year more. So, which is bad. It's almost too much to keep track of, but it's fun. Like we're getting good intel on where the bulls are, or at least where we might start hunting in 11 days.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's what you're doing it for. What about salt? Do you put salt, make salt licks or anything at those campsites? Minerals or anything?
Well, you're not allowed to do it down in the Kootenays, but I definitely run salt up here in the Caribou for sure. I run it for, well, I put it out for deer, and the moose and the elk seem to come to it too. So that's, but I think what's Region 4, it's CWD. You're not allowed to do it down there, I think.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
right?
we're not allowed to put any bait on our campsites because of the CWD, and that was before this year's spread of it. Like, it's been like that forever. So then it's even more critical if you want to catch, because we've put cams everywhere. Like, we put them on where we thought bedding zones were. We've put them on heavy game trails. I like the water. I've had some unreal cam footage of big bulls bugling with some cows, like just those like laid back 6 points. So, and that was because they were hanging around the water, and they're hanging around wallow long enough to get those pictures. So for me, it's I like that, and I like saving all my trail cam pics. I just like having it. I always like reviewing over the years and seeing if I can see the same bull for multiple years and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, Blake and I have some cams in a pretty I guess popular spot for elk, and we've seen some monsters there over the years. And yeah, there's nothing better than that pulling that card and seeing what you're hoping to see on there. Now, do you guys run, you mentioned, Curt, you mentioned video. Do you run strictly video on all of yours for elk too, or are you running pics and video, or you split it up?
Depends if it's somewhere that's hard to get to, I'll run like the photo burst, 3 pictures, because it's gonna burn less battery. You're still, if you go in there every 2 months to check it, you're going to get a shit ton of pictures. And I mean, the photo burst is pretty good because you'll catch something walking by. If it's something that I can access easy, if it's going to take me 15 minutes to walk to, then I'll run video. And it's just videos. You'd be surprised what you pick up in the background of a video when compared to, you might get the ass of a deer, ass of an elk, but then you have it on video, and you get that ass, but then it turns around and circles back. Or I had a video, I had a cow and calf elk, and they were feeding, and the cow spun her head, looked up kind of over her shoulder, and the next video you see their asses in the trees, and then a cougar jumps into the video and chases them, right? Like, if you had that photo burst, you'd never pick that up. So it's pretty neat. And you can freeze frame the videos, right? So if you're looking at, say, a target bull, and you're like, okay, like he's a 6 point, or maybe he's a 5 point, but then, we do it lots when we're digiscoping for sheep. You hit a video, and you can play that video back, and you can take stills from it, and then you can really pick that antler set apart. If you might pick up a sticker sticking out one way, right? So but it eats up the battery fast, and you got to make sure you got a pretty big SD card in there too. Yeah.
What do you run for cards? How big?
16 to the 32s.
Yeah, that's 30, a lot. That's a lot of stuff.
32s is a ton. Like, if it's something that's a long ways away and I might go check it once, I'll load up the lithium batteries and put a 32 in it. And then still same thing, I'll run photo burst, and then you might have a shit ton of pictures to go through. But if it's something accessible, kind of whatever I got handy, I'll throw in. Doesn't really matter if I'm not going to check it every 2-3 weeks, then it doesn't really make a difference. But and for cameras too, one thing that I've learned the hard way is make sure you brush them out, because there's nothing worse than you go to your camera and you got 1,500 pictures, and you're like, oh, here we go. And it's one fucking little Christmas tree that flaps every time the wind blows. Oh yeah. And you've got 1,000 pictures of nothing, right? Or horses or cattle. If you put a salt block out and you're like, sweet, and same thing, you got 1,500 pictures, and you got 1,500 pictures of some guy's fucking horses or some guy's cows sitting there eating your salt, right? That's a kick in the dick too.
Well, with brushing out, like, I know that, and I've forgotten either a little hatchet or a little handsaw many times. So I'm like that, but my play was to hang a camera, and I get in there and I'm like, fuck. And then you get up in the alpine, and it's that shitty alpine trees that you can't break, so you're twisting and bending. And so that's like a tip, like throw in a little saw, a little hatchet, something. It goes a ton, like a long way when you're hanging cameras.
Yeah, for sure. No, anybody who's played with cameras knows that you get that, like you said, it's right on 1,500 of nothing but a tree moving. Yeah, it just sucks.
Before I forget, and Matt had said something earlier, and we don't know if Matt's just fucking with us or not, but he did say, like, how do you count 6-point faster? And that is actually a good question, or a good comment. Like, everyone struggles with that. And I would say what I did back in the day was I studied a lot. Like, when I was watching elk hunting videos, I was really watching like the antlers, trying to learn how to distinguish the mature bulls. Because I think one of the hardest things for guys, and my father-in-law taught me this, and it's something that you got to be careful with, was like, you see like the saber, and if there's, or the 4th point, and if there's a big Y behind it, he's most likely a 6-point. That was like the old boys rule. He should have 2 brow tines, his 3rd, and then 3 up top, right? Now, you got to be careful because you see, 1 brow tine bulls, or you see big whale tail 5 points. And I've had guys almost pull the trigger on that because you're like, it has to be a 6-point. Look at how big that whale tail is. Yeah. And that's why I wouldn't recommend that. But you can tell the difference between a big 5 and that, that extending saber. So I used to look at a lot of photos, a lot of videos of elk, just really study that, as far as, instead of just being like, that's a big bull, it's like, what makes that feature at the back end. Now, I will say, and I do this, is if there's 4 points up top, that's a 6-point bull. Like, I haven't seen, in all the bulls that I've seen killed right now, or in my last 16 years, if it had 4 up top, which is like a 7-point, that in normal circumstances, even if he's missing a brow tine, he's still going to be a 6-point. So if you're looking for some kind of speed, I would say that. But I mean, you should be checking all the way. But if you're looking for that, if you're like, oh, I'm only going to see him through the brush, and you saw 4, waving up top, then I'm pretty much safety off at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you're not necessarily your specific area, but the Kootenays is known to have a lot of bulls at crown too. I mean, I've got my first bull behind me was crowned on one side, and I think I saw on your Instagram today you had 2 of your bulls there, and you mentioned something about brothers. I couldn't really tell. I saw I was getting on an airplane, but it looked like they were both crowned, right? The smaller one was crowned as well. Oh.
Yeah, so that bull is from 2 years ago, and he was crowned, and then the bull from last year he's a 7x7, same spot, Royals. So I mean, I was talking to guys, like, I put that post up and said, like, brothers ? And they were like, well, how far away were they when you, like, from where you killed them? And I said, I had to guess 10 to 15 kilometers as a crow flies in maybe. So I'm like, yeah, it definitely could be. I would assume they probably have some kind of genes that are the same, because actually I've taken 3 crown point bulls. One was a long time ago, but similar area. So it's probably from that far back.
Yeah, for sure. It probably is. Well, my bull was nowhere near your area. I know that. It'd be a different gene pool. Smaller genetics where I shot mine, for sure.
Fucking area, Chuck.
Yeah, backyard. We are going to circle back to the story of your bull from last year. But before we do that, I kind of want to jump ahead a little and talk about your guys' calling strategy and walk us through, if you would, a typical morning in the elk woods with Curt and Dev, apart from the usual bullshit you two get up to. Let's talk about the elk hunting. How does the first
we usually chirp each other right out of the tent. Get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah,
I'm sure. But tell us how your typical serious elk hunt day goes, where you're going after it.
Well, getting up early is definitely, like, the first thing that comes to mind. And you hear that in hunting in general. I would say, like, and why I bring that up is because when you hear these podcasts, you hear a lot about killing elk in their bedding areas, and you can kill elk in the middle of the day. So I think some hunters think, like, well, then if I'm killing them in their bedding, or I'm killing them in the middle of the day, maybe I don't need to get up early. But you got to locate them. You can't find where they're going to bed if you're not up early. So I would say that's the first thing, is where I've been waking Curt up for years. Like, he'd be like, just wake me up, like 3:30, 4 o'clock. I'll roll in push on them and we'll get going. If it's from the house, we've hunted from the house before. Luckily, we do go in the backcountry, so you don't have to get up that early because you're somewhat close. So that's kind of like the first thing, Kurt?
Yeah, like it's changed over the years. It started at waking up at 3 o'clock, heading out to the mountains, be hiking by 3:30, 3:45, and then you're like, you get into, like we're going into spots that we've been in the daytime, so we're not going in blind, but you make to a spot, let a call out, and maybe sit there for 5 minutes, see if you locate anything, move on, and keep working your way either up the mountain or up the drainage, whatever you're hunting. And then we were doing that for years, but then you got to come out every day. And it was a bitch of a hike, like you're doing 2.5 hours one way every day. So eventually we started camping up there and just, saving ourselves when we're actually hunting. And then, you're in the right spot when you've got bulls that are screaming 150 yards from your tent all night.
Yeah.
And you wake up, you don't really sleep because your heart's just racing, right? Because you're just like, you're waiting. You're like, fucking, I want it to be daylight right now because this thing's right there. And that, like, they will not let you sleep. They will sit there and bugle and bugle and bugle and just rattle your bones. And then if you, by daylight, they don't make a peep. So that's why you got to be up and ready to go and mobile. I would say a good 45 minutes before, like shooting light pops up and, headlamps and navigate your way through the bush. And that's, you want to be on top of them. When it comes shooting light, you want to be right there. And like you can, like we talk lots of times, we try to find the like the bedding areas. And once they start moving and they're transitioning to their bedding area, a bull with cows isn't going to turn around. That's from our experience, right? So you might get a satellite, might come loop in. If he's dogging the herd, he might loop back to see what's going on. But anytime we've had bulls, and they're answering every call, but they're getting farther away and they're not going to turn around. So for us, it's, you want to be up in the mountains as much in the dark as you can. And like, that's when you're going to hear 2-3 bulls piping off, because once they start moving, they all might blend together. They might, it's one bull might turn into 3 all of a sudden. So that's kind of what changed ours, camping up in the dark, I guess, or getting up in the dark.
And you make a good point, Kurt, too, is like, once they start that move from feed to bed, they're on a mission. If there's more than a couple elk and it's a bull with cows, he doesn't give a shit. The satellites will follow and they'll bugle too. But if you want to find their bedding area, I've found anyway, that's the best way to find a bedding area is if you're on a week-long hunt and you've got limited amount of time and you get on elk early in your hunt, stay with that herd for a couple days, figure out what their pattern is and try and kill that bull, right? Or kill a legal bull. One of my buddies he's had a ton of elk success. He hunts peace country, and it's the area he hunts has a lot of hunting pressure. And one of his strategies, if he's struggling for good spots, is he sets his alarm for like 1:30 in the morning, jumps in the truck and drives around, road bugles, tries to pinpoint elk in the middle of the night, and then marks them and comes back in the morning if he likes a spot or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Early bird gets the worm, right?
Well, early bird figures out where the elk are. I've never killed a bull in the first hour of daylight. In 16 years, I've never had it happen. I'm not saying people don't do it, but because of, like you said, the calling. So I guess to go back to your first question, is you're up early and we're bugling in the dark and we're not afraid to bugle. I think that's the thing that we've learned probably only 5 or 6 years ago, to not be scared to bugle. There was so much talk about that at that time, where it's like you're scaring the bulls away. And it was because most of the information we were learning or hearing was, well, they're leaving, but they're leaving because, like you said, Chuck, they're going to bed. And Kurt said it. Like, that's what it took. We've learned in the last 4 years is that, they're not running away from us. They're just in their natural transitioning zones, or going from their feeding, probably maybe some water on the way, maybe feeding a bit. But so we always, like, typical mistakes where you'd Oh, he ran away because we bugled at him, and then we stopped hunting.
That's the classic line, right?
Classic
you guys
line.
blew him out.
Elk hunters, we blew him out, and that was so far from the truth. We should have just dogged him, and that's basically the strategy now. So it's find elk, like find the bull. If you haven't located them the night before, we're gonna go in. We have a couple call spots in all our areas, or if we're going into new areas, it's not hard to kind of figure out a call spot. It's get up on a bit of a timbered ridge, call into a basin, get up higher, but bugle often, like every 200 yards in some of the country in the Kootenays. Curt and I have stories of midday. We were walking across mountains and calling. All of us were cow. There was 4 of us. We were cow calling away and a couple bugles, and it took till we were 50 yards on top of the elk, and they were probably bedded until they responded to us. So the sound doesn't travel as far as you think is the big one. Yep. So we probably bugle more than most people.
Yeah, and I think that I'm kind of in that boat now too. It's like you got nothing to lose. Make some noise, mix it up. If you got 4 guys walking together, everybody does a cow chirp every once in a while. You never know what that bull's going to answer to, right? Like maybe he doesn't want to answer to a bugle until you step on him, but maybe he's a satellite and he just got his ass kicked by the herd bull and he's, ready for a cow, and there's a cow chirp behind him 200 yards and he bugles. Yeah, I'm with you.
Often we do start with cow calls just because it feels right. Mainly because I've had bulls 30 yards away in the dark, and you bugle and they do run away because that scares them. If a bull was like not paying attention and he's 50 yards away and you don't know he's there and you rip a bugle, he's like, what the hell? I didn't know there was another bull there. But so we've always kind of done that where I've always let a cow chirp out first. I don't even expect a response. And that's the big thing is like, don't even expect it. It's happened. Lots of times we've hoochie mama'd into a basin and all of a sudden a bull lights off. Like you never know. But honestly, like when I cow call as my first call of the morning, I'm not expecting a response. I'm really just putting it out there that there's another elk over here. And I don't want to be super aggressive with a location bugle when I haven't made any noise at all, I guess is the big thing. So I'll often do that and warm up the reed. That's probably the biggest thing. Make sure the reed's sitting in a good spot. And then your bugle is going to be ready to go.
So what do you like for that walking cow call? Are you a lost cow, lost calf, or just chirps, or what do you do?
Yeah, chatter mainly. There's just social chatter. Sometimes a little nasally, but usually you save that to when you potentially even need it. Honestly, the cow calls over the years, I used to use a lot of cow calls. And it's the bugles now. It's what makes the difference and understanding that kind. So, if we locate a bull, so in a perfect scenario, a hunting morning, we've got a bull, he's bugled. Now it's game on. And the biggest thing we've learned to this point is make a move. Don't sit there. You're not, especially early. And now it's like, and I have a story of this. I can tie into this with that. I've called Curt. Like literally told him we're waiting for a bull because we were like pretty sure we put him to bed, but we're going to let him go to bed. So anyways, what I'm saying is we move because we want to stay close to the elk. We usually in our country, the wind's still coming down. So the thermals are still coming down. The elk are going up. This is typical in the West Kootenays and probably the East. The Peace is a little bit flatter. I don't know how those big river bottoms work there, but where we're at, we're typically below the elk. That's normal. Yeah. So, and it works in our favor because the morning they're going into the wind, heading up to their bedding zones. So you're not going to catch up to them and you don't want to get ahead of them. So you're kind of just dogging them and you're just trying to keep tabs on them and you just want them to answer. You want to stay close enough to him for him to answer, and you might be able to call him in. But it would be a quick because you got so close, he might pull off his cows if he's with cows. Or you might grab a satellite. That'll be common. Like you could pull a satellite over, but it's been rare that those first morning encounters have we ever laid eyes on a bull.
Yeah, I've hunted that country, the East Kootenays especially, quite a bit. And what I've found too is this happened to us a couple times. You dog them too much, get too close, and then, if you're watching too many elk hunting videos from the States on YouTube, you see the guys get close and they piss off that bull and he goes into a scream fest and comes charging in to kill you. What I found the Kootenai bulls do is if you do get too close, at least it's happened a few times, you'll be bugling and all of a sudden it goes quiet. You're too close. You don't know you're too close. And all of a sudden that bull sneaks back to check you out and he comes in quiet, and then the wind fucks you up, right? Or he comes around behind you or below you and all of a sudden you're screwed. We've had that happen a lot, especially in that real steep country. You get too close and they're like, whoa, they go quiet, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, yeah, if you put them to bed, I guess, in a sense. Like at one time I had a bull light off about 9 o'clock in the morning. Watched the herd tracks. This was actually on a logging road. I stepped out of the timber, got on the road, ripped a bugle, bull bugled. I'm like, holy shit. Followed their tracks, contacted Matt. We were hunting together, and I said, I got a bull over here, and I think I know where they're bedding. Like, it's about that time. Like, it's almost getting that. And I remember hearing on podcasts or hearing, like, if you know they're going to bed, give them like an hour. Yeah. Like, let them settle in and basically like get comfortable, and then go in and try to get on top of them and start calling them. And that's what we ended up doing. And we called a little too early. So we gave them like an hour, and then with no noise, we just sat there, had some snacks, had a coffee, and then went in on this bull. And we made the mistake of cow calling on the way in, and he came out of his bed while we were still moving, and he like bull rushed us. He came in to 15 yards, and we couldn't get a shot, couldn't count, couldn't get set up. And that was a mistake we made. Just, it was dry, and you get that in your head that you're making a lot of noise. So you just want to let out a cow mew just to say I'm a cow. And, and I've been cautious with that over the years because of this risk of like when the bull just decides to run at you when you don't want him to. So,
yeah. Well, and I think too, it's, the country that we have in BC, especially where you're at, it's easy to say, we'll follow them and put them to bed. But unless you know where they're bedding, you don't fucking know where they're bedding.
So that kind of goes back to the mapping when you were saying too, like trying to figure a bedding zone out. If you're wondering what you use mapping for, a lot of times is we want to kind of understand where they're potentially bedding. But man, they bed in the fucking weirdest spots, like in the West Kootenays. Like, I don't know. I'd be like, I'd bet on this bench. This looks flat, and they're not, because they just need a little ridge. They just need a little pocket where they feel safe. Like, they bed in some nasty, nasty timber we found.
Hey, Curt, what's it like up in your country? And what's the strategy there?
So it's probably more like the Peace area. Like the moose that I've killed, they seem to like swampy area. Like you'll be calling in a bull moose will walk out, right? So they're kind of similar. They'll feed in cut blocks at night. Like it's totally different hunting than the Kootenays, where you're hunting these big bulls and drainages and alpine. Here, you're more kind of looking for big dark timber. That's kind of where they seem like once the daylight comes, they're heading to that timber to bed down. And it's anywhere close to water. It seems like, you'll walk into the timber and they might be bedded in like a little grassy meadow, but it's all surrounded by big dark timber. You got to find those spots, like Devin said, with the escouting or the walking around, the fat maps, anywhere that you can see big timber, water sources close. It's been good. That's been where I found them anyways.
What's the vocalization like in your area compared? Like, are they quieter, or are they? Yeah, they don't talk much, right?
And it didn't used to be. I mean, when I first started elk hunting, I remember being surrounded by elk, and I was scared to move. It got dark. We were waiting for bulls to come in, and I remember having 5 different bulls all around me, and I was shitting my pants. I was sitting next to a tree, scared to move because I could hear they're literally walking around me. And then 2 started fighting, and I was like, holy fuck, this is intense. And those days are few and far between now, right? Like you used to get that every time you go out. And then obviously the word got out that there's elk around Quesnel, and then everybody and their dog we were bow hunting back then lots, right? So you get a lot of these pickup hunters pick up crossbows and they're ripping bugles from their truck, right? And then, yeah, it just turned into an absolute gong show now. So now it's usually crickets. You might get a day like where bow season's usually better just because it's way less pressure. But you'll get out, you might get a response, you might have an encounter with a bull. But come rifle season, it's usually pretty tough. And it happens. Like I've killed a bull out in those areas that, you know, I'm not joking. I've gone out opening day for rifle, and I'll go out at 3 a.m, hike in the dark, and come out and count 21 trucks parked in 8 kilometers. Like that's a hard number too. That's not a bullshit number. 21 vehicles in not a very big stretch, right? So when I say it's crazy out there. And
that's a lot of hoochie mamas.
It is. And, you know, like if it could be midday and we're, you know, like hiking back to the truck, and you might be just walking the ridge on a slash, and you see a truck pull up to the forest road. Guy that doesn't even get out of the truck. You just see a bugle go out the window, rips one off. So those are the guys that I like to fuck with. That's when I kind of hunker down. I find a log pile and answer right away. And then you see their eyes light up. They jump out of the truck and they're pointing. And like you'll fuck with them for like 10, 15 minutes. And then you can see the lights go on where they clearly like, oh, this is another hunter. And then they jump in their truck and drive away, right? So it's very, very frustrating. Like I said, it's such a small area that gets so hunted that it's very frustrating. At least once a year, I drive home from some of those spots I got, and I'm like, I'm never coming out here again, right? Yeah. And then that asshole Devin starts sending me trail cam pictures, just teasing me, and I'm like, okay, I'm coming down next weekend. There's been times where I've gone down for 10 days, come home, work for 2, turn around, drive right back down for another 4 or 5 days, and come back. Like it's tough. It's very tough. I'm jealous of where he lives, that's for sure.
Yeah, a lot of us are. That's good. So this happens to everybody. Well, most everybody. I guess it didn't happen to us last year because we were lucky, horseshoes up our ass on one day hunt. But what's the strategy when things go quiet and like how long are you sticking to an area if it's quiet? Or do you switch gears and just cover country and hit all your spots, Dev? Or what do you guys do?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest fear in all hunting, but especially I think elk hunting, because you want, like if you've been dreaming about elk hunting all summer or all year, like most of us do, it's going in, not hearing anything, not seeing rubs, no sign, you're like, fuck. And that's always the conversation of like to bivvy or not to bivvy as well, right? So it's last year, or the last time Curt came down, I had 7 or 8 different spots because I was like, we're not gonna get hung up in one area. We'll go into our, you know, quote honey hole that we've hunted a lot of years. We'll spend a couple days in there. If they're not piping up, we're gonna pull out. And they weren't. We went in there. There was not a lot of sign. The cameras were not showing us anything. So we're like, okay, well, let's not waste any time in here. Like I think it's hard sometimes for a hunter to be like, nah, this is my spot. Like, I know they're in here.
Oh, yeah.
You got to pull out and you got to try a different spot. And Curt and I did 7 different mountains in 7 days. And when I say 7 different mountains, it's hiking off the roads into the bedding zones that we have pinned. And some of them I didn't know well. Hunted them a bit. I've had some encounters, but it was like, let's just find the elk. So definitely run and gun. I mean, cover country, bugle a lot, get into spots, get up early. And then, of course, it was the last day of Curt's hunt that year, and it was a quiet year. It was tough. We didn't get him a bull. I don't even think we got a bull that year at all. And last day, we found the spot we probably should have been hunting for 7 days. Now, I've had cameras on that spot for 2 years, and there was some nice bulls in there last year. I just didn't have to hunt it, so it's definitely high on the list this year.
Sure.
But pounding country, so if you're like, when you ask that question, like it's quiet, what do you do? Well, sitting at camp because it's hot and quiet definitely
You're not
isn't going
killing
to
nothing.
get you a bull. Now, you might not kill anything because it's hot and quiet and shitty hunting, but get out, because look at how many, like, we found a good spot because of it, and it's helping us put another spot on the board because we just kept pounding the bush. Kurt's down there, and when he actually has, like, I can hunt it every weekend. I can get out a lot. He's down there. We're not going to sit at home. As much as we'd like to just chill and drink beer, we're there for a reason. Like, we have a job to do, so it's like keep pounding right to the bitter end, and it gives us more spots. Like, we're typically not going into areas that don't hold elk. Like, let's be honest, we do understand, I guess, where to go, and it's often my suggestion is, like, hit the end of a road and walk off it. Start looking, trying to find game trails. Like, look for tracks on the roads, look for rubs, and then just start walking in the bush. Like, just do it. Like, if you're having trouble, go find a spot, because that's often you'll hear a bugle or you'll get some kind of action or find a honey hole.
Yeah, it's like any animal. Like, you have to hunt sign. If you're not seeing any sign, you're not in the right spot. And Devin and I, like you said, we've gone into our honey hole, no tracks, no shit, no rubs. Fuck it, get out of here. They're not here right now. And they were back there 3 weeks later when I obviously wasn't there. But we're not saying just go hike through the bush mindless, because that will just, your chances of bumping something out of the area are very good. But if you go in there knowing they're there and you just slowly walk through, take your time, you'll find fresh sign if they're around. If you're not seeing anything like that, then pull out, find a different spot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like you said, you're not killing them from camp, and there's a lot of pressure on, like, if you look at your situation, right? I mean, Kurt's got a young family at home. He's got a limited amount of time off from work. He's relying on Devin to have the spots lined up, have the game plan. He arrives there, it's go time. So you guys both have a lot of pressure, which is like most of us, right? Unless you're retired and have nothing but hunting time, then you've got pressure. And let's face it, nothing's better than an elk steak in January, right? So we want that meat, right?
The pressure's real for sure. And I love hearing bugles. It's one of the reasons I go out. It's probably one of the reasons most elk hunters get, hooked on elk hunting. And until I hear my first one, like, once I hear my first one, I'm like, okay, still know what I'm doing. You have that doubt where it's
doubt
like,
yourself. Yeah.
Fucking don't hear anything. I'm calling wrong. I remember the years, like, I know now that I'm not calling wrong, but I remember the years of be like, I'm obviously calling wrong because I'm not hearing any bugles.
The elk are sitting back laughing at that dumbass over there, right? That's what you think, right?
To put that in perspective too, like in Cornell, like an area that's hard to call, I'll call nothing for 2 days, and then I'll drive back into Region 5 in like farmers fields where I know there's elk, and I'll drive out there right at dark, and I'll have bulls just going crazy where I'm like, okay, it's not me, it's the elk, right?
Yeah.
It's a good way to, if you know there's elk somewhere where you can't hunt them, to maybe not Jasper National Park, because apparently that's a no-no. But I found that
so
hard. But I thought, like, test your calling on something like that, right? Like, I don't know if you're allowed to do that. Maybe I shouldn't be telling people to do that, but
you can make noise anywhere you want. I don't think it's a problem.
Freedom of speech.
Yeah,
exactly. What about weather and moon phase? Do you guys pay any attention to the moon?
Yeah, I mean, I do, but I don't think it makes the difference. So it makes animals do different things when the moon's bright. Don't get me wrong. That's 100% true. It's easier for us to be outside when the moon's bright and it's clear out. Like, so yeah, they're more active, and I would say we've seen the same amount of bugling or less bugling whether the moon was out or not. So I don't know, like, that whole moon phase theory. They seem like they go to their bedding zones earlier when the moon's bright. I will say that 100%. So you need to be out there earlier. If I was going to give like one piece of advice, if you know you're hunting the full moon and it's not going to be cloud cover, then you're going to want to be out in the woods early to hear the bull bugle at night, because it's probably going to be earlier that he bugles. And that would be my suggestion. But I don't think that the actual phase is like everything. Kurt and I've told him days to come down because when the moon's good, I think if you could hunt the darker times, you might get into more bugling action because they're not as active at night. So that's really what you're seeing. I wouldn't say that they won't be, like, you hear that, oh, they won't bugle when it's a full moon and they won't bugle when it's hot out. And you're like, I've killed bulls in 22-degree weather in the middle of the day. And it sucks. I hate hunting hot weather. Don't get me wrong. I can't stand hunting in September in 25 degrees, but they are still going to bugle if the cows are hot and there's rutting action to be had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think same thing. I mean, every bull elk that I've been in on or called in successfully has been midday. And on 2 occasions, it was the week of a full moon, and it was like 11 o'clock or 12:30 in the afternoon when we pulled the trigger. So I don't know. I'm with you. I think it changes the timing during the day of their cycle in which they feed and sleep, and that's about it.
I think so. Like, it definitely does something. I wouldn't say it doesn't do anything, but what happens when the clouds roll in, that's my favorite thing, is like the full moon comes out and then you see that it's going to be rainy all night and you're like, fuck yeah. Like, I love that. I'm like, you sons of bitches can wait till I get out there in the morning.
Exactly. How are we doing on time, Blake? I can't see here. About hour and a half almost, eh?
Yep. Yeah, we got about a half hour left. Okay,
cool. Well, I want to unpack last year's season. So Curt, you can help out because I know you were anxiously on standby, and I just listened to the podcast again the other day about Curt's part in this. I'll let you tell the story, Dev, but again, we're calling this episode, how to kill a target bull. Well, I'll let you tell the story about how you found the initial bull you were after, and maybe walk us through a compressed version of what happened.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to why trail cameras are hung, and what you dream about. This is like one of those picture perfect scenarios. So Matt and I get back from our sheep hunt. We're all gung-ho to go elk hunting because we had a successful sheep hunt last year, and we've had trail cams up for the month of August. We hung them before our sheep hunt, so we've had our elk cams out, or we haven't checked any because we've just been sheep. So Matt's got a pretty flexible schedule, so he can run into the woods and check cameras middle of the days, like Tuesdays, whatever. Like, I think the 31st ended up being, I don't know, like a Thursday or something, and I ended up having the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off heading into the opener. So he goes out and he'll play pranks. Like, we'll fuck around with each other. Earlier in the year, he sent a picture to the group chat, bull up in this creek on our camera, and I'm like, that's not, like, I knew it wasn't the spot, but it was a monster. It was like a 400-inch bull, right? So I was like, if that bull's up there, he's like, we're not hunting anywhere else. And he's like, no, like, it was just a joke. So the day before hunting season, or 2 days before the opener, he goes up on like the 30th, and he sends us a picture on the group chat, and he said, and we've posted it on Instagram. And it's a big bull. It's like a 7x6, like big herd bull. We're like, holy shit. So we're jacked right up. Like, seeing that gets you just fired up if you're not already fired up for elk season. So then we're like, okay, well, we know where we're going. Like, 100% on the 31st, we're going in. We're going to tent. Like, we were ready. Like, bows going, full gear, tent. Like, we had our sheep gear still in the same bag, so we're like, just strip the shit we don't need and let's go. Like, even, and it was just kind of a shittier logging road, and we just camped on the side of the logging road, just got right in there, camped it like way off, and we walked maybe 2 kilometers up the logging road and tried to locate this bull. We knew where that camera was, so we're like, that's where he was 2 days ago, so that's where we'll start. Got nothing. Okay, that's fine. We kind of knew this mountain, so we wrapped around the mountain into where we think they're kind of bedding area where they go into. Get up on the backside, we get a bugle. Sweet. Don't know if it's, bull, but September 1st bugle, always nice, first day. So we start doing this, and Matt's shooter, because I mean, I shot ram, and I was like, you shoot, like whatever comes in. And at that time, the archery season was still any bull. This year it's changed, but any bull at that time. So if he sees a 5 point, 4 point, Matt's gonna arrow it anyway, so it doesn't matter. So okay, we'll do our typical call strategy and kind of stagger call. Like, he's 40 yards in front of me, I'm raking, I'm doing just standard advertising, bugling, and this bull's responding, and you know, you talk to your caller and you give him the, like, I hear him walk in, and that's a good sign. So just Matt gives me like the keep going,
yeah.
Whatever you're doing's working. So I just keep going, and I can tell that it's getting really close, because like I just have my eyes on Matt, and I can't see the bull or anything, and he's like getting his bow ready, and I'm like, no fucking way. Like 2-3 hours into the opener, like he's gonna draw back, and I'm watching. I'm like raking and watching and doing it, and you could see he stop, and then that was it, and it was like deflating, and I'm like, no, like you knew something happened like right there. So I give it 5 minutes. You could hear the bull kind of walk away. I didn't see him. I walk up. What happened? And sure enough, he's like, the bull came out 23 yards. There was brush, and he needed to take one more step, and we were on a little like ridge back, kind of where the timber met, like a little alpine meadow, and just that bad time of the morning when the wind, the thermals just start swirling. Yeah. And that bull came out, and Matt watched him stick his nose in the air, and we felt the wind flip, and he stuck his nose up, and just because he was an old big bull, and he just turned away and walked away, and Matt just didn't, rifle season probably could have neck shot him or shot through the brush, could have made a shot, and it ended up being the big 7 point. So he got a 23-yard glimpse of that rack and it turning away, which is awesome and kind of devastating all at the same time. So
rookie mistake, eh?
Yeah. So we kind of go, well, we pursue a little bit more and get a few more bugles, but you're not going to call that bull back in. And, Paul Medell, we do follow him quite a bit, and we actually talked to him a bit, and I reached out to him after this, but at the time I was like, I think we should leave this bull, Matt, because they say, like, he always says the first time using calls on a bull is your best time of killing that bull. And then after that, you should give him a little bit of time. So I was like, I think we should give him time. Let's go to other spots this weekend, and then we'll maybe come back on this bull in rifle season is even what I was thinking. Like, we'll give him a week. Like a big old bull like this, like I don't think he's going to get hunted where we found him and pushed him into. That was kind of the hard decision to make. Paul actually responded in the week and said, like, that's what I would do. I would give him 7 days. I'm like, okay. So kind of that was it. So Matt ended up calling another bull in archery season in the next afternoon, I believe, and missed that guy. So we had a pretty good start to the year. And then we just, now we got to go back to work, and we made a plan for rifle opener. So we didn't go back in on the Saturday for the last day of archery season. We left that area alone, and we said, we'll hunt these other areas, and then we'll make a plan. Rifle opener, we're going to sleep up in there before rifle opener, and then we'll go in, basically run the same play, see if we can find that bull, because he's big enough that it's worth, putting the effort in.
For sure.
So that's what we did. Slept up in there, went back in, same play, went to one spot, bugled, nothing. Okay, well, let's not even waste time. We know where he was last time. We know where the herd's been going. Let's go right back into there. Went around the back of the mountain, same play. Got a bugle at about 8:30 in the morning. Located him, played with him a bit. Oh, and actually we heard him, and then he shut up, and then we walked in a little bit farther and it was just silent. We're like, and we've had like a pretty busy morning already, so we were like, let's stop, we'll have a coffee. So we made a coffee and kept Matt, had Primo's cow call in his pocket. He's like, I never use this thing, and he sure enough blows it while we're having coffee, and the bull lights up like 200 yards away. Like, what the fuck?
Jesus.
Like,
really?
we're like, awesome, but like, and then Matt's like, I'm finishing my fucking coffee, fuck that bull. So, and I'm like, fair enough. So finishes his coffee, and then we end up dogging this bull in this herd all the way down the backside of this mountain, and we put him to bed way down this ridge. Like there was these big finger ridges that came off the backside, the south side of this mountain. And we got on one finger ridge. We probably got within 100, 150 yards of this bull as they were moving towards wherever they were going to bed. And then we ended up getting like 400 yards. There's two finger ridges, about 400 to 500 yards apart. But they were really steep in between, like maybe a 600-foot straight down and straight up, like a bit of a cliffy creek. But I was like, I could see some openings in the timber. And I had just shot my ram with my Fierce at 585. And I'm like ranged, and it was like 450 over there. And I'm like, Matt, let's just set up here for now. And if we can call from here, he might just step out and we might be able to count him and let one go from here. So that's what we were doing. And I'm bugling at this bull across these finger ridges. He's ripping back at me. He's lip ball and I'm lip ball. Like it was like getting like aggressive. And I'm like, fuck, we're just not in the right spot. Like we can't just rip over here. So it kind of, he didn't come out, didn't show himself. And we were like, oh, well, we think it's the big bull because it's the way he's acting and everything. So we kind of go up the mountain. And we made the call when we got to the top to make, it was like 10 in the morning. And these are like those decisions, elk hunting, when we talk about like staying with it and not going back to camp and having breakfast and those types of things that we've all done. It's like, why wouldn't we go? And it was Matt. He's like, we should just go. And he's good at convincing me. And it doesn't take much to convince me, but he says, it's like a short par 5. This is how he convinces me to go places. He makes it like golf. He's like, it's just a short par 5 down that ridge. Like, okay, yeah, we should go. So sure enough, we walked down the ridge that he took with his herd. And we used fat maps at this time, and we pinned the location we thought he was at. So then when we were walking in there, we could have a rough idea of being like within 150, 100 yards. So we did that, and we got right up on top of him. And we didn't call until we got right there. And then we just ripped the bugle because he knew there was a bull around, right? Like you got to think like that bull knows that there was a bull harassing him, and it's not uncommon that they'll go and try to find the herd. So we got right up on top of him, rip a bugle, and he lights up, and we're like, sweet. He's right down. And then it was nasty, shitty blow down, just thick. I don't even know why. I don't know where their trail is to get into where they were, but it was not good. So we're just starting to get our gun out or whatever, make our setup plan. We hear another bugle off to the right. And both of us were like, well, that doesn't sound like the same spot. That's weird. How did he get on the other side of the ridge? Like it's a pretty steep little ridge we're on, so you could kind of hear both sides. So we're like, well, whatever. And this bull just keeps bugling. So Matt bugles at him and bugles at him, and bull responds. And we're like, well, whatever bull, I don't care which one it is. Like, let's just hunt the bugle. So we go back up the ridge like 200 yards. And get over the south side of the mountain a little bit, and Matt keeps bugling and just kind of happy. He always says like, oh yeah, Devin just pushed me out of the way. He's like, oh yeah, I'll take the shooting on this one. I don't remember doing this, but obviously I did. And it was like,
excuse me.
I called him in archery. You're calling him in rifle. It was eye for an eye. And so anyways, we push over, and within, you know how it happens sometimes with elk is like once they're on a rope and they want to come check you out, you could hear them coming crashing through the dry timber. And Matt just kept, raking, bugling, little cow chirps, just real natural, just the good playbook that we've kind of developed over the years, like just matching his aggression and drawing him in and letting him know that we don't really want him in is the big thing. And within 20 minutes, maybe less, that bull was coming up at 60 yards, and I started to see him come through the timber. And it wasn't super brushy thick, but it was just that like thick pine tree, not a lot of shooting lanes. So I just got on him right away. Like I leaned up against a tree and I just started following him in. And I didn't have a shot. I could see his tops. I'm like, man, he's a good bull. Like saw the antlers. I'm like, oh, he's legal. So then I kind of knew he was going to walk out of a little tree patch and then probably turn right towards me. And that's what he ended up doing. And I ended up having to shoot him frontal at, I guess, like 12 yards. And I almost headshot him. Awesome. Well, I did head shoot him, but I almost headshot him to start with. So because I had my crosshairs on him, and you know how they walk with their head down? Yeah, just like that. And I'm like, fuck, I should just like he's 20 yards. I should just pound him and he'd be done. But I waited because I knew he was going to do the standard, like he'll get too close and then just do the like look, and he did. And then I punched him right in the front and let him have another one when he spun. Yeah. And then I finished him off when he was on the ground, because I don't know. I get a little antsy that they're going to run down the mountain. So I just keep shooting until I see him laying there. But
it's not a bad idea. I think Blake's bull last year was probably the first one that I've seen. There we go. There's a picture. Blake's the first bull I've seen that actually died with one shot. And, the other ones were walking dead usually, and it takes a couple. Yeah, he's a fucking stomper.
So someone asked earlier on the chat, what are royals? So this is royals here. So if you're looking, scan back a bit, Blake, go to a different one again. There's better ones, maybe the front facing. Yeah. So those ones there. So those points off of like by what you call their force, the ones that kick out to the side are what you call royals. You'll hear them called like crown points. I think we were calling them crown points, and someone asked. So
yeah, it's a beauty. So what did so back to the story. So this was not the target bull. This was a bonus target bull.
Yeah, this wasn't the target bull. So like we didn't even know this bull existed. As far as trail cams, we had no pictures any year of this bull. I've never had this big of a crown point. I don't even know if I've had a royal or crown point bull on trail cam. So this is the allure of leaving the road systems and getting deeper.
You just never know. You
never know. Like, and so here's the thing, is that 7-point is a bigger bodied bull. Well, from my guess, from the picture. And he's either more aggressive or he is actually like stronger, and because he was the herd bull.
Yeah.
And this was a satellite. Now a strong satellite, I'm sure that 7-point was going to have to fight this guy
at some point
every day, because this was not a weak, like small bull, as you could tell. And he actually had scarring in his crowns, like right in the pockets. There's horn scarring. So he's probably been battling with that guy over and over again, but he's been getting his ass kicked, and that just goes to show you the caliber of potentially that other bull. But to basically shoot it, and for guys that no score or care, I mean, we don't really, I score bulls because I'm curious. I don't hunt bulls for score, but I do like to know it is anyone who hunts big game like to know score.
Absolutely.
And I ended up grossing him at 368. So the fact that he went 368 and there's potentially another 367 point in that same spot, I was just like, holy fuck.
No, well done. And chances are that this one that you killed, he may have been the herd bull up until this past season, and then this other fella maybe is a bit younger, a year younger maybe or something, or just came in and he's in his prime, and that other bull, this bull was maybe just peaked or whatever, right? Because it's a dominance game, right? I mean, you look at some of the injuries that these bull elk get during the rut. Like, we my buddy had shot a 5-point a couple of years ago, and there was like a 4-inch spike off of a front stuck right in behind his lung, and it was in between the ribs, and it was in there, and it was all festered, and it was inside him. The puncture hole had already sealed up, so he got that wound probably a month before he got killed. Just the shit these things deal with. They are the toughest animal, and you did the right thing. Shoot him till he's down, right? Like,
I got to stop shooting him in the head, but yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. So I guess, Curt, you're planning on this one being in your crosshairs this year. Is that the plan?
It's my year now. It's
the target bull.
Put him on the spot right now, but
it is. I'm the call guy this year. I mean, for Matt and Curt, like that's my plan. Is like I had a great year last year, and I kind of just want to call bulls in for him. Honestly, I know both of them are such good hunting partners like, oh no, because they like to call too. I get it. They're like, fuck off. I want to call too. Like that is fun, like raking and calling and being on that side of it. So by all means, I'm not going to say no if they're like, hey, you shoot today. Like, fuck, what am I, stupid? But I would be fine if, like, honestly, if Curt came down and I want to just call. I want to call him in a big bull, and same with Matt, like, or a bull. It doesn't have to be big. But fuck, it's nice to call in big bulls. Like when you start to, I mean, the last two bulls level. Matt's called in for me were over 340s, both of them, and it's now I'm kind of hooked on trying to find the biggest bulls on the mountain, I will say.
And calling them, you're dead right, Dev. I mean, this year I'm going to be the caller. Blake's going to be a shooter, and then we're bringing our buddy Ed Thompson. He hasn't done a lot of elk hunting, so he's coming in with us, and I'm going to be the caller. Like there'll be 2 other guys with rifles in there, and I may or may not even pack a gun this year. I might just do all the calling, just sit back and watch these guys get excited when the bull comes in. Hopefully, that's the plan.
You gotta pack a gun, because as soon as you don't, it's gonna slip by your fucking shooter.
Come my
and
way,
it's gonna be that time you're like, I can't believe I didn't bring a gun. So just that's the only reason you pack it. Like I will always have a gun or a bow on me as a caller. Don't even play that game.
All right, you're my left brain. Then I'm gonna pack a rifle for sure.
Yeah, you gotta have it.
Right on, boys. So other than elk, what do you guys got on the menu for this year?
Probably do just my normal mule deer hunting in November. Like it's so 1st to the 10th and then the 21st to the end of November, and then 10 days of bow season. But that's kind of it. No moose draws this year and no northern hunts. So I'm gonna put everything I got into my hunt down south, and hopefully it takes me a month to recover all October, and then I'm gonna go hard for mule deer.
Right on. What about you, Dev? It's all in for elk. What else?
Elk's the big one. Yeah, with Curt coming down. I mean, Matt and I will be weekend warring it until that week when Curt's here, and then if probably need be, like, because I don't expect all our tags to be cut by September 20th, so I'll be hunting all the way to the 30th elk, I'm sure. And then Matt drew a bighorn tag for the East Kootenays, so we're gonna be we're gonna spend a bit of time over there. I won't have a ton of time, but with work and stuff, but I'm gonna get one stretch of a hunt in, so that'll be the first time heading East Kootenays for a bighorn hunt with him.
Well, so I hope it works out. Looking forward to we'll get Matt on for his glory story after that, when that hunt's
there you
done.
go. Yeah.
What do we got for time left, Blake?
12 minutes.
Getting close.
Yeah, I see 9 minutes on my clock.
All right.
On yours? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we got a little bit of we got a little prize tonight. We're going to give away a 5-pack of This Is Coffee from our old buddy Wardo. You want to spin the wheel of fortune there, Blake?
Yeah, I just did it ahead of time here. So Brady Olson, you're the winner of the coffee. So I'll DM you afterwards here, and we'll get your address to mail it your way.
Right on. Well, let's do a couple quick questions for the boys while we got them on, and I'll ask a question, and you guys can take turns answering it. It's our little rapid fire. So I'm curious, because I know you guys have both done really well on a couple of species, but favorite big game animal to hunt? Curt.
I'm a moose guy.
Yeah.
That's elk is right there too, but I don't know, something about a big old swamp donkey coming in.
Right on. Dev?
It's elk.
For sure.
And it'll probably always be elk. I can't shake it. I've been on the sheep hunts, been successful on sheep hunts, and I love doing it, but it's elk. Yeah.
Right on. All right. Favorite big game dish? Curt.
Stone sheep backstraps, cooked in garlic, rosemary, salt and pepper, a little bit of steak spice on there.
That sounds pretty good. Dev?
I think mine's elk tenderloin the day after you kill a bull. Solid. Curt showed me this one. You marinate it that day you get it there, and You don't freeze it or anything, and then you put it on the barbecue whole, cook it like a roast, and then slice it into steaks. And I think there's just something about that, or it's really hard. I would say that because it's more common to get this, but a rack of sheep ribs in the backcountry after killing a sheep is, not everyone gets to try that, but that was an awesome experience. So I would say that's like number 2.
The fat. Oh my God. Fat. Oh, fuck. So good.
You try explaining that to people and they're like, how is an old sheep that good? And you're like, I don't know either. I don't know, but it's that good.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, last question. If money was no object, what would your dream hunt be anywhere in the world, any species? Curt.
You take this one, Deb, because I got to think about this a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is one of those, I don't know the exact areas. I've heard of there's Arizona guided elk hunts. There's those ones that you have the chance of killing like a 400-inch bull where you get into
governor's tag or something like that.
Yeah, or they just have those guided ranch hunts. So I'd probably try that, even though I love doing it myself. Seeing the videos of you get to choose 350 plus bulls for 7 days where you're just out there here. You don't even have to call. You just walk into them. There's something about that. I know it's not the same draw as what we do, as far as being proud of what you get up to, but that one probably for me, just because it's like a dream to have a bull that big. I don't know. So it's probably not the right way to do it because I've killed elk, but it's just something about elk for me.
Yeah, mine would be Yukon NWT moose caribou combo.
Nice.
70-inch plus, 400-inch caribou, big, where you need a fucking helicopter to pack that thing out.
Yeah.
That's
all right. Last question. And this is a little more on the serious note, and I know you boys share the same passion that Blake and I do for this cause, but conservation is the real reason that Spike Camp exists. That's what got us in here. And I chatted with both of you guys at the sheep show in Penticton about this, but if you got a message for people, and you can do one or both of you, what's the message for people regarding conservation, and what should we be doing?
I can go start with this if you want.
Yeah, go ahead, Dev.
Mine is educate the masses when you have the opportunity. Talk about hunting with the passion that you talk about, or that you feel. We talk about it with other hunters and on platforms like this and on our platform. But when I get the opportunity, I get lots of people, fellow coworkers, especially in the Kootenays. As much as there's some killers and some fucking badass hunters in the Kootenays, there's also a lot of people that don't hunt in the Kootenays, let's be honest. The Nelson area, that it's traditionally not known just for a whole hunting and industrial population, right? When people ask questions and they're serious about, well, why do you hunt, and why would you mount something on your wall or stuff like that? And I tell them straight up, the memories and the things like that. So that would be my thing for conservation, is try to get the importance of what we do, and explain what the term trophy hunting is when they ask it, because that one always seems to come up. So that's kind of it. Yeah. They'll be in between, not the haters. You don't need to educate the people who are against us. Do the ones from, that just are curious and they don't know.
On the fence.
Yeah.
Those ones. Right on. All right.
And for me, I would say support your organizations that are doing a lot of the background work. We're big advocates for Wild Sheep Society. I mean, there's a whole bunch more too, but that's what connected the dots for us, right? And those guys, they're not just sitting in the background letting shit happen. They're boots on the ground. They're not just looking out for sheep, they're looking out for hunting in general. So I would say support those organizations that are supporting other hunters. And like Devin said, I'm married into a family that doesn't hunt at all. And when they met me, they probably thought I was just a hillbilly redneck. And then I tell them about all my trips come on, and the first thing they do when we get a family gathering, all the guys want to sit down and listen to what I did this hunting season. Or, you know, like I shot a grizzly bear, or we shot a stone sheep, and they just think we're so crazy for doing this crazy stuff. For us, it's not really crazy, but for them, you know, they don't, camping for them is going to a provincial park in a 40-foot motorhome, right? It's not going on your, you know, hoofing it for 10 days, living out of a backpack, eating freeze-dried fruit. You know, it's taking a shower in a glacier creek. Like that's insane to probably 99% of people, except for all of us. Like that's what gets us going in the morning, right? Like I'm going to work my ass off so I can take time off in the fall to go do this shit. I don't want to go sit in a lounge chair somewhere and get sunburned. I want to go work my ass off and have a story at the end of the hunt, whether I kill something or not. But explain these great stories that we like to the people that maybe they might not want to go hunting, but I guarantee you every one of them is going to enjoy those stories, and you're going to change their perspective on things where it's not just Elmer Fudd's going out and shooting the first thing they see. It's guys that want to take old animals. They're putting their money and their time into helping those animals as well, right? And helping, you know.
Exactly. I think we're done, eh, Blake? We're out of time.
Yeah, we got 45 seconds till this
All right.
power's off.
All right. Well, boys, I'll finish off. Thank you very much for taking the time. We love what you guys are doing. It's the Come Out Heavy podcast. You can find it on all the platforms. Instagram, they're out there as well. Same handle, Come Out Heavy. Yep. And look forward to the rest of Elk Camp, and which is Thursday night. We've got Mike Bridger on. So join us then. That episode will be 7:00. So thanks, everybody. Curt,
Thank you very much.
Curt and Dev, I'll chat with you guys in the next couple days. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.